Last time, we heard the final words of the sage Duban, a warning wrapped in a story, a tale he told not only trying to save himself, but to wake the heart of a king blinded by envy. That warning echoed long after his death, carried by the fisherman to the Ifrit trapped in the jar. And though the creature raged, unwilling to learn, the fisherman answered with wit, sealing him back inside. I am the legendary storyteller, and today we begin the story of King Sindbad and his falcon. After that, we will follow the fisherman to see where fate leads him next. There once lived a king, known far and wide as Sindbad, not the sailor of the seas, but a ruler of land and armies, of palaces and gardens, whose throne was as mighty as the mountains. Among all his treasures, there was one companion he loved above all, a falcon. This bird had been raised by the king's own hand. It had sat beside him since its earliest days, resting not only on his wrist, but in his heart. They hunted together, rode together, and trusted each other in ways no words could capture. One morning, the king set off for the forest with his falcon by his side, seeking the thrill of the hunt. They rode deep into the wilderness, where trees whispered secrets, and the sun burned hot above. The king, thirsty and tired, found a thin stream of water seeping from a rock. He held out his hand to catch the drops, each one a small promise of relief. Just as the king lifted the water to his lips, the falcon struck it away. The king was shocked and tried again, thinking perhaps the bird was thirsty, so he held out the water for it. But once more, the falcon knocked it aside. A third time, the king hesitated, wondering if the bird wanted the water for the horse. Yet again, the falcon struck it away, and anger filled the king's heart. He saw only disobedience, never suspecting protection. And so, blinded by frustration, he struck the bird. The falcon fell to the ground, its feathers ruffled, its body trembling. Even then, it tried to rise, its eyes still fixed on the stream. The king turned away, no longer caring for the bird's warning. At last, he bent low and drank straight from the stream, but as soon as the water touched his tongue, he felt it bitter, metallic, and strange. He let the water spill from his mouth, then followed the stream uphill. There, twisted around the rocks, lay the carcass of a great serpent, dead but still dripping venom. The water had been poisoned all along. In that moment, the king understood. The falcon, his most loyal friend, had not been defying him, it had been saving him from a slow, silent death. He rushed back to the bird, but it was too late. The falcon's breath was fading, and its life had slipped quietly away. So the mighty king, who could command armies with a word, knelt beside a fallen bird and wept for what he had done. That was the story Duban the sage told, with hope that it might awaken King Yunan's heart. But the king had chosen suspicion over wisdom, and so the tale ended not with understanding, but with silence. Duban was executed, and too late, the king opened the book he had been given, only to find it blank. From those pages rose the poison that would return the very illness Duban had once healed, and the warning was complete. The Ifrit spoke again, not with fury, but with a strange stillness. It asked for mercy. It promised a gift, not gold, not treasure, but knowledge. It told the fisherman of a hidden lake, far from any road or town, where fish swam in colors no man had ever seen. The Ifrit said, "Present these to the king, and he will enrich you. But beware, cast your net in this pool no more than once each day." The fisherman carried the fish to the king of the land. The king was astonished, for never in his life had he seen such creatures. He rewarded the fisherman richly, and ordered the fish to be cooked for his table. But when the cook laid them on the fire, something strange happened. From the walls of the kitchen, a lady appeared, mysterious, shining, unlike any woman the cook had ever seen. She spoke to the fish, asking if they remembered their promise. To the cook's horror, the fish lifted their heads and answered her. The cook let out a cry and fainted from shock. When she awoke, the kitchen was silent, the lady was gone, the fire was dead, and the fish lay blackened and burned. Terrified, she rushed to the vizier and told him everything. The vizier frowned, unsure if he could believe such a tale. But when more fish were brought and set on the fire, he too saw the same wonder with his own eyes. The vizier lost no time. He went to the king and told him everything he had seen. The king himself wished to see the truth. He sent for more fish, and once again the same marvel happened. The king was amazed by what he had seen, and he called for the fisherman, asking where such strange fish had come from. His curiosity grew stronger with every thought, until he could no longer stay in his palace. So he set out with a small band of men, taking the fisherman with him to show the way. As they traveled, the fisherman's heart grew heavy. He wished he had never met the Ifrit or cast his net into that pool, for it had brought him nothing but trouble. Before long, they reached the place. It was not far from the kingdom, yet When the king asked his men if they had ever seen it before, each one shook his head in wonder. There, before them, lay a steel pool, set in the middle of 4 mountains that rose like quiet guards around it. The place was silent and strange, as if hidden from the world. The pool was filled with fish of 4 colors, red, white, yellow, and blue. The king then turned to his vizier and said that he would go forward alone, for this mystery was his to solve. Leaving his men behind, he stepped into the strange, silent land, ready to uncover its secrets. As the king walked on, he saw something dark in the distance. His heart lifted with hope, for perhaps someone there could explain the pool and its strange fish. When he came closer, he found a palace built of black stone and plated with iron. One gate stood open, the other closed. He knocked gently at first, then again, and a third time, but no answer came. At last, gathering his courage, he stepped inside. The palace was of great beauty, silent and empty, with a fountain sparkling at its heart. The king was amazed by such beauty, yet saddened, for there was no one to ask about the mountains, the pool, or the palace itself. He sat and thought, when suddenly he heard a sound, a voice heavy with sorrow, rising from deep within. When the king heard the lament, he rose and followed the sound. It led him to a curtain over a doorway. Behind it, he found a young man seated on a low couch. Though grief waited on him, he greeted the king with courtesy. The king explained that he was there on an important errand and wanted to understand the pool, the fish, the palace, and why the young man was alone and weeping. At this, the young man's sorrow overflowed. The king watched with sympathy and asked him to share his story. The young man lifted the lower part of his robe, revealing that from his waist down, his body was stone, while from his navel to his head, he was fully human. Seeing this, the king's heart ached with sorrow and regret. The king realized that he had come seeking the secret of the fish, yet now he understood that he must also learn the story of this young man. The young man explained that his father had once ruled the city with wisdom, and when he passed away, he had inherited the throne. He married, but soon his wife began to change. She would go away to a distant path and return as if she were not the same. One night, while he tried to sleep, he overheard the attendants whispering of her secret actions. Their words troubled him, for they hinted at betrayal. Later, he noticed his wife slipping out of the palace in secret, making her way through the city to a small, distant hut. He followed her quietly. Inside the hut, he discovered that someone was using magic and clever tricks to manipulate events in the city. Though he could not understand all the words spoken, he realized that she was conspiring with another person, acting against him and the city. While his wife was distracted with her tasks, the prince struck swiftly, leaving the man badly wounded and unable to speak or move. She did not notice what had happened, and the prince quietly sheathed his sword and slipped away. Back at the palace, he lay down, waiting for morning to gather his thoughts. When his wife came back to the palace, she spoke of her grief and that she had received terrible news of her family's misfortunes. Her mother had passed away, her father killed in battle, and her brothers lost to tragic accidents. The prince, knowing the true cause of her sorrow, chose not to confront her directly, allowing her to grieve in her own way. For a full year, she remained in mourning. Eventually, she requested that a special dome-shaped tomb be built beside the palace for her private reflection. The prince agreed. She placed the injured intruder there, but he was no longer able to interfere with her household. He lived quietly, unable to speak, and remained only because his time had not yet ended. Each morning and evening, she visited the tomb, tending to him with food and drink, maintaining her ritual of sorrow. One day, the prince, tired of her constant weeping, he followed her to the tomb under the dome. He listened to the words she spoke and the verses she recited. Then he grew angry and questioned how long such sorrow would continue. Hearing this, she suddenly accused the prince of harming her beloved companion, claiming that he had suffered greatly, caught between life and death for 3 long years. The prince admitted his role in the incident, and in his frustration raised his sword as if to punish her. But when she saw his intent, she laughed, declaring that what had passed could not be undone, and that the one who had acted against her companion was now under her control. Then, using her magic, she transformed him into the state seen now, half stone and half man, unable to stand or move freely, neither dead nor fully alive. She extended her spell over the city, its markets and gardens, transforming the people into fish, each group marked by color, and turning the islands into mountains that now surround the pool. Each day, she maintained her power over him, keeping him in this form as a constant reminder of her strength and the consequences of his action. The young man explained that his his wife was in her chamber across the hall, while the man she loved lay injured in the tomb beneath the dome. Once the king learned where the woman and the injured man were, he resolved to take action. He carefully hid the injured man in the tomb and placed himself in a position to speak in his stead, so that the woman would believe her beloved was still present. Speaking without revealing himself, he guided her words and actions, letting her think she was aiding the recovery of the man she cared for. He instructed her that if she truly wished for him to be well, she must lift the magic that bound him. When she obeyed, the young man regained his true form. The enchantments over the city and the fish were undone, and balance was restored. Only then did the king ensure that the woman could no longer wield her power to harm, securing safety for all involved. The king prepared to return to his land, while the prince explained that the city had seemed closed because of the magic that held it. Now the journey would take a full year. Yet, despite the long road ahead, the king invited the prince to travel with him, treating him as the son he had never been given. Once they reached the king's land, he appointed his vizier to govern the prince's city. Later, the king summoned the fisherman who had brought the magical fish and helped save the enchanted city. The fisherman was honored with robes and recognition, and his family was well provided for. One daughter married the king, the other the prince, and his son became treasurer. The fisherman's journey led him to wonders he could never have imagined, and the king's courage restored the prince and a city long trapped by magic. With the prince safely returned and the fisherman's family honored, the king went home content, knowing that justice had been served and courage rewarded. From the falcon's warning to the enchanted lake, we see how the smallest acts, trusting a friend, listening to a guide, or following a strange path, can save lives and heal hearts. But the night still stretches ahead, and the legendary storyteller has many more stories to tell. See you again.